everyone. Design isn't just about how a space looks. It's about how it makes us feel, think, and function. Every environment we step into shapes our emotion, focus, and even memory. In this Mindscapes series, we explore how design goes beyond decoration to improve our lives. I'm Professor Nadim Adi from Interior Design at Texas State University, and throughout this series, we'll speak with designers, artists, psychologists, and researchers to better understand how the spaces around us shape our mental well-being. Our environments can either support or challenge our ability to focus. For individuals with ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions, design plays a crucial role in shaping their daily experience. From reducing distractions to creating sensory-friendly spaces, design can be a tool for empowerment. In this episode, we'll explore how design can truly make a difference for neurodivergent minds. Our first guest is Dr. Mais El-Junaidi, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who brings her considerable expertise in, psychology and medicine to this discussion. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me here today.
So, Dr. Mais, tell us a little bit about how spaces and environments can affect our ability to focus.
So, in general, organized spaces can help people focus more. Cluttered and disorganized spaces can distract anyone, let alone those who have ADHD. So the more organized the space is, the better we can perform and focus.
So pretty much when our mothers or dads used to tell us to clean up our room, there was a bit of wisdom there.
It makes you feel usually better.
And in terms of, let's break it down a bit. So what would the principles that we're looking out for be in a space?
So the whole purpose in case of ADHD is to make the space organized and to avoid distraction. And you can have many design aspects towards this matter. For example, let us talk about colors. Some colors like orange and red can be or considered strong colors and can easily distract someone. So we can replace them, and these colors include the colors of the walls, the colors of the furniture as well. We can replace them with less distracting colors, more calm colors like white, beige, gray, light green, light yellow. These are less distracting. So this is one of the examples about colors. Also cluttered furniture, cluttered walls, all these can distract someone. So we try to avoid this, the clutter on the furniture, the clutter on the walls. There is the light as well. Light, if it is bright, it can be strong. We can replace it with a natural light, and we can control the level by using curtains, for example, on the windows.
So pretty much the lighting in the studio is not
it's very
really
strong.
the best.
It's good for working in an office or something, but if you want to create a more ideal environment for a person with ADHD, you need to try to organize a space to eliminate distraction.
And is that the same when it comes to, say, home versus school or work, or is every space slightly different?
It's very similar actually between school and home. It's very similar. You need to create an environment that is more organized and less distracting.
Okay, and you touched on light and color and say clutter. What about the sense of touch? So how hard is a chair or how soft is a chair, for instance? Would that make a difference?
So in ADHD, it doesn't matter that much. The child gets distracted easily. So we need to eliminate this factor. So if the things are comfortable or not comfortable, it wouldn't matter that much in ADHD.
As long as it's kind of in a happy medium range.
Yes,
I
of
suppose,
course.
right? Okay. And a few years ago, I guess, there was this whole trend of fidget spinners and fidget toys and all of that. Is that somewhat helpful for a person with ADHD, or is that for something else?
So fidget spinners, some studies show that it helps people with anxiety, but people with ADHD, they are not anxious.
Oh,
They get
right.
distracted easily, but they are not anxious. They don't suffer from anxiety. So fidget spinners, it's not something for them.
So it might be distracting a bit
It
more
might
than...
be it might be distracting just as any other toy, but it doesn't do anything about ADHD itself.
Okay. And since you've probably seen many spaces, but have you come across a space where you think, well, this is the space that I want to kind of use as an example of a well-designed space, for instance?
So I haven't seen myself an ideal example of an interior design or a space that is dedicated for ADHD. Actually, the studies about this in interior design and ADHD are rare, but the whole thing about it always, as I mentioned, it's about removing or eliminating the distractions. So the ideal space should be organized, clutter-free, with calming colors, with natural light, for example.
And I'm assuming in the same way that we tend to be different from person to person.
Exactly.
There's going to be a range of things between different clients, I suppose.
Exactly.
Okay. And okay, let's go on the opposite way. Have you ever seen a space around here, or well, hopefully not in Texas State, but anywhere that you thought this is the example of what not to do for an ADHD space?
When there are a lot of posters on the walls, there is a TV screen, for example, playing maybe children programs. If there are a lot of toys, colors thrown everywhere, blankets, cluttered environment, furniture that has certain patterns, all of these immediately a sign like this is not good for ADHD.
So pretty much a sports bar is the worst place to try to focus in. Okay. Tell us a bit about one of the problems when it comes to, well, the misconceptions about design is the minute you talk to a designer, you're out thousands of dollars because they're going to tell you, well, you have to remodel the entire house. What would be some kind of everyday small steps that someone can do to make their space ADHD friendly?
Organize a space by dividing the space into zones, either at home or in school. It's the same. Dedicate a zone for eating, dedicate a zone for playing, dedicate a zone for studying. So this will help keep things organized. And to avoid the clutter as well, keep the space organized. Try to use a storage box, drawers, and label everything, the folders, the drawers, the boxes, because it will help find everything faster and easier and save a lot of time as well. Choose colors that are calming, choose furniture that are clutter-free. If you already have furniture that has a lot of clutter on it and patterns and all of that, you can use a cloth, for example, to cover it, which is usually not very expensive. Try to remove posters if you have a lot of posters on the walls. All of these might help a lot reducing the distraction.
So so we're leaning more towards kind of minimalism in our design rather than extravagance.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And but in terms of say, for instance, I want to focus on a certain spot at home. As you mentioned, we have like a workspace, a dining space and such. Would we put like attention-grabbing elements in that area, or would that still be kind of within the distracting?
That would be still within the distracting. So just we need to make the child, for example, learn that this area now is for eating and eating only. So we're trying to organize the behavior as well, not only the zones and the areas. This area now for study and study only, this area now for playing, and you can play and have fun in it, and so on.
So in the same way, they told, some research shows that you shouldn't have a television set in your bedroom because it affects the quality of your sleep, somewhere along these lines.
Because your body gets used to it, and it becomes harder to fall asleep.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned this works for children, and I guess that's a lot of the research is on children, but once we establish these habits, does that carry over to adult life, or are the organizational habits
the organizational habits will, like, if we teach the child this from the beginning, it might help a lot in the adulthood, because the child will get used to it. It will become much easier to control.
Okay, so pretty much it's kind of the same thing as we've learned as children. If you have good eating habits as a child, it kind of helps you in your adulthood.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So there is some wisdom there that our parents used to have. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mace, for these insights. I'm pretty sure lots of things I didn't know before. So
thank you.
Really good stuff. Well, in our next segment, we'll be joined by Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our second guest is Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her considerable expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So when we're looking at spaces and how distracting they are, how do you think a space would be helpful for someone to focus more?
Well, from an interior design perspective, there are several variables that are going to impact a person's ability to focus. Lighting, being too intense or the wrong color temperature can really impact your ability to focus. Materiality and texture, especially visual texture, if there are excessive patterns or color palettes that are not complementary, those kinds of things can really be distracting.
So I'm guessing the lighting here is way
pretty
too
intense in a TV studio. Yes, this would be definitely too cool probably for a lot of focus.
Okay, so we're kind of leaning towards having like a more yellow type of
yeah, generally
light.
Speaking, warmer light, and really, you know, dimmable lighting that people can adjust.
Oh, right.
The ability to personally control and manipulate as many of those variables in the environment as possible is always going to help.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's different from person to person.
For sure,
Oh,
yes.
right.
Yeah, and you know, the more variability we can give people in that environment to shape it to their needs, the better.
Got it. And you mentioned visual texture. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So, you know, tactile texture are the things that we can touch and feel, the texture of a sofa, the texture of a rug. But visual texture, wallpapers, even patterns on flooring, those kinds of things can go either way.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they're repetitive and in soothing colors, that can really help with neurodivergent tendencies.
Okay.
But if they're not the right palette or they're too busy, that can be extremely disconcerting.
All right. So, but I'm guessing visual texture is the majority of people, because they don't do the designer kind of thing where we always reach out and try to touch everything.
Right. We do touch a lot.
Yeah. That's kind of how we can tell a design student overseas, right?
That's true.
They're touching.
We're always looking and touching.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. And when it comes to homes or schools, what would be some key design principles that you think we should look out for when we're designing these environments?
Right. So managing the visual environment, enabling them to have access to natural light, ideally nature, those kind of things can be very calming and promote focus. Flexibility in terms of setting that environment up to meet your individual needs is really important. And then I think something that is sometimes overlooked is the ability to move. Sometimes movement The ability, you know, whether it's a fidget toy, which is not necessarily an interior design specific thing, but a rocking chair or something like that enables you to move and calm yourself in a variety of ways. So different types of furniture, those kind of things can all be helpful.
All right. So we really should ignore the advice of our teachers in school about stop fidgeting.
Yes, right. Yeah. When my son was in elementary school, they all got yoga balls to sit on.
Oh, wow.
Which really helped a lot of the kids with ADHD because, you know, they could kind of rock a little bit and it was extremely effective.
Plus, it's a good workout.
That's right. It helps your core.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And do these things carry to the work environment as well?
They do, yes. So workplace design is actually the area of expertise where I've done the most practice. And the overarching goal in workplace design now is to provide a wide variety of work settings that's not a one workstation or one cubicle meets everyone's needs anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Adaptability, flexibility, different types of work settings are really important.
And from your experience when it comes to workplace design, I'm guessing it matters who you work with as individuals as well, right?
Right, but there's so much diversity in the workplace now, right?
Yeah.
Multiple generations, and then of course increased awareness of neurodiversity types of issues.
Yeah.
We really approach any corporate project with the goal of doing the most good for the most people.
All right, gotcha. And as you're designing, have you come across some cool examples out there?
Oh man, there's so many great offices out there. And really, you know, that comes down to a concept in our field called evidence-based design, right? There's a lot of research being done on how we can better support the range of needs across the population. And I mean, any good office today is going to try to acknowledge that. We're going to have some areas that are for heads down work where you don't want to be distracted.
That's true, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Areas where you want to collaborate, areas where you don't have access to natural light, areas where you do.
Yeah, so I'm thinking back to my days as a postdoc. We didn't have a single window in our office, so like, yeah,
right. And some people really thrive in that environment, right?
Yeah.
Engineers and, you know, certain job tasks, really do well there. And
exactly,
so you providing as much flexibility and diversity as you possibly can is the right way to go.
Gotcha. And to the person listening to us now, and they want to have think, okay, I can't afford to hire a designer to do all of this, but what would be some things that they could self-prescribe to help them with focusing, I suppose?
You know, I think probably just looking at the environment that you're occupying with a fresh set of eyes, and maybe giving yourself the latitude to try a lot of different things. I personally I have 4 different spots in my home where I work. When I work from home, I'll move, you know, depending on the task or depending on what I'm doing that day. So setting yourself up with the opportunity to figure out what works best for you in terms of mobility, in terms of lighting, in terms of texture, acoustics, you know. That's extremely important.
That's true. Probably not having your workspace beside the TV. Right.
Or where I'm accessible to my teenager. I need to be separate from that sometimes, right?
That too,
But little moves that you can do, right? Can make a big difference.
And usually when we're looking at, well, inevitably in every office, you end up with a mountain of papers and notes and things. What would be one way to kind of help deal with these things?
So clarity and organization of your space is extremely important, right? And I think I've seen online lots of different organizational tools to help people get focused, and some of those are things that you can buy on Amazon. They're not necessarily interior design specific, but things like cubbies where you can store things, having more open shelving where things are visible to someone with a neurodivergent problem can be really helpful, because sometimes they'll have the out of sight, out of mind. I mean, we all can have that.
No, fair enough.
But sometimes having things visible and clearly organized can really help.
All right, and I wanted to touch like we're very visual as designers, but would say a certain scent or a certain taste help when it comes to focusing?
Yeah, to your point. So it's all those senses, right? It's vision, it's texture, tactile, it's smell, it's hearing, the acoustics, all of that can be very off-putting or supportive of what you're trying to do.
Okay. I know one of the one trick we used to hear as students is that if you want to remember something specific you're studying, chew a piece of gum as you're studying it.
Interesting.
And then chew that piece of gum again when you want to remember it, so you'll kind of tie it to a piece of gum.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how effective that was.
Yeah, did you try it?
Not try. I was aware of this after I finished my exam.
Oh, too late. Too late.
Yeah, but I'm guessing you have to have variety in the tools that you use.
Absolutely, yes, because that's the beauty and the challenge of neurodivergency, right, is that what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another person. Okay. But I think just creating a space for that conversation is so important, and then encouraging people to try all those different things until they find what works, because we used to have a one size solution for everyone. This is what you got. And that just can't be the case anymore.
Got it. So I'm guessing it's the same thing we tell our students is know your client
Yes, and don't assume that they're exactly like you.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah. Let's kind of we mentioned some good examples out there. Were there any kind of examples where you looked at it and you thought, yikes? No need to name names.
Right, right. Yeah, I think, I have seen a few projects and office design solutions where they went in and tried to make some real bold statements.
Gotcha.
Right,
okay.
and those can be great, but sometimes more is just more, and it can create, extensive pattern or certain kinds of colors not used appropriately or thought through from a color psychology perspective, even though it might relate to corporate branding or something about the company.
Yeah.
When you take that out of the branding world and put it into an interior environment where people are sitting 8 hours a day, it can have a different impact.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. So we always need to be looking at our work through the lens of maybe a client wants to do these things, but we need to run them through the filter of what's best for the end population in this different setting.
Gotcha.
And so colors may need to change, patterns may need to change.
Fair enough. And I'm guessing like what's good for 1 hour isn't good for 8 hours.
Correct. Right. Which goes back to that flexibility and diversity. Maybe I can sit for a couple hours in the morning in this kind of space and work really well. But by the afternoon, I might need to move to a different kind of space.
Got it. Yeah.
Because maybe I'm overstimulated, or maybe I just need a change of scenery to keep the focus going.
All right.
And so really enabling and supporting that kind of change and personalization is crucial.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In our next segment, we'll be joined by Crystal Marine, interior design student at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest is Crystal Marine, an interior design student at Texas State University who brings her perspective to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
One of the things I suppose when we're talking about the student life is your ability to focus and stay on task. How do you think the environment that you're in impacts that?
I think in many ways. It could be anything from color to noise. Auditory stimulation and visual stimulation for me are the biggest things in a space.
All right.
For that.
Okay. So when when we're talking about visual stimulation, would that be in the form like of, say, the type of light, or like what's on the wall or something?
Yeah, it could be the type of light. It could be the natural light that is let into the room. But a lot of times for me, it is really based on color.
Okay.
So like if there's something a little too like really bright colors don't really
Gotcha.
center me
Okay.
when I'm kind of in that mode. But for some, I understand that it can, you know,
Yeah.
help them. So
So maybe less kind of 80s style,
Yeah.
you know, colors, and more
less Saved by the Bell.
exactly right. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you mention audio stimulation, would that be like what would your preference be?
I think that's typically from the other users in the room. That's why I really like Alkek specifically, because they have the separate rooms, the quiet floors versus the social floors.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming well, in my case, when I used to study, if I'm studying, then I like it quiet. If I'm working and drafting, then I'm putting a song or something.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. What would you think if you're giving out pointers to your friends and your junior colleagues? What would be the key pointers to tell them? Well, okay, here's what I do to focus. Like that. Here's what you should do to focus, or something like that.
I mean, I guess it's typically what I'm doing, like you just said. You know, if I'm drafting, I'm definitely. Whatchamacallit, I'm definitely listening to music again, but it's definitely I'm not social either, but I don't know. Honestly, in classes, I typically tell people, especially when I'm TAing and stuff, and they ask for advice, I tell them to try to book one of the rooms in Alkek and then go from there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And in terms of, I guess, in terms of music, do you think like certain types of music work for different types of projects, or is it kind of the same thing across the board?
For me personally, it's kind of the same thing. I really like a lot of instrumental, something I don't really need to focus on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just kind of more airy melodies and stuff like that. But
yeah. All right. Okay. That's really interesting, because it's if I don't know the words to a song, I find myself distracted with, okay, what are they saying?
Yeah.
And you know, are they swearing and stuff? And you know, can I play this in front of my folks or something?
True.
Is it too much? Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned that this is what you do if you're studying and all, but is that the same across environments? So, i.e., is it the same approach at home and at school, or do you have like different preferences?
I would say it's relatively the same. For some reason, if anything changes, specifically at my house, it's where I do it. I literally have like 3 different desks where I can do different things. But yeah, that's kind of how.
Okay, and apart from, you mentioned like the visual stimulation and the audio stimulation, let's explore the other senses, for instance. Like how would the things like the surface that you're working on, what impact does that have?
I mean, I think just simply if I'm hand drafting, anything with texture just is not helpful for me.
Fair enough.
Especially when you're using the tiniest little pencil that just keeps breaking.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true. That's true.
That can be a little stimulating.
Yeah. And I'm guessing as you've been here in Texas State and and out and about, were there specific spaces that you saw and you thought, well, this is a space that I think I could really focus on and get a lot of work done in?
I know there is, but it's never in a building I frequent much. Like I really do like the engineering building. They have a lot of little spaces that the students can work on, and they even have like little boards, dry erase boards and stuff. So I think like,
oh, that's good.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
It's a little. I get a little jealous.
Yeah. Shout out to the engineering
Yeah.
department.
Yep.
Yeah. And how about in the opposite way? Were there certain features that you saw somewhere and you thought, oh goodness, like that is not something I'd like to have in my workspace or study space?
Definitely the loud floors in LCAC.
Okay.
A lot of the tables are pushed together, and it's almost like a dining hall instead of a library space.
Oh, okay.
And that's not, I can't work in an environment like that.
Fair enough. And I'm guessing if there's someone who's nervous and I know it from myself. Sometimes you tend to shake, tap your foot a lot. If it's a joint table, you're gonna get that, vibration across the table. So, okay. So that's focus. Do you think when it comes to someone, if it comes to someone who is dealing with ADHD as a designer, how do you think you'd approach that in a sense?
I definitely would not suggest that they sit in a group full of people at a group table. I think that's something that really needs to be managed with their environment. So lighter colors, less auditory stimulation, so probably in a closed room. Maybe glass, so they still have that visual access to that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think just kind of minimizing those things.
And one of the things we get asked a lot is that, well, if I need to hire a designer to kind of evaluate my space, then that's going to cost me an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
What would you tell people who are watching, key small things that anyone could do to their environment to help them, have less distractions?
I mean, obviously, I think the most obvious thing is clutter. That can really, even if you don't realize it, can really affect you mentally in your space. I would say just lighter, more calming colors, so light blues, maybe light greens. Definitely stay away from maybe something like red. And then, I mean, even like easy little felt things for your walls that you could buy that kind of restrict that auditory stimulation. Yeah. And help with that. Yeah.
Okay. And I love the fact that you're touching upon colors as well, because you mentioned light blue and light green, I guess. Why do you think those kind of are better? Well, I understand red is kind of the stop sign red or something. I don't think that's a better space for anyone, but I guess like the blues and the greens, it seems like a very common thread.
For me, I tend to evoke calming characteristics from nature. So I find that you find a lot of blues and greens in nature, whether it's water, vegetation. So, and a lot of my own projects kind of stick with that mentality of using those.
Yeah. Oh, I love the analogous of like a blue and a green, because pretty much that's what we draw in since we're kids up until now. Like, okay, a green tree, a blue river or sea or something, and these are kind of key experiences for everyone, like being out in nature or being out to the seashore or something like that.
It's universal.
Yeah. So I guess that has that calming effect, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think, just touching a bit more on that, do you think that the color in itself would be enough, or do you think, having a green element, a plant or so, is more effective?
The element itself, as in just color, like focusing on color.
Yeah.
No, I think a lot more goes into that.
Right.
For me, color is kind of the basic part of that.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's fantastic. I think it's a lot of interesting bits and pieces there. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our second guest is Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, an assistant professor of instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who brings her considerable expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nadine.
So when we look at environments and spaces, how do you think that impacts our ability to kind of focus or ability to not get distracted?
Right. So I love this conversation, so interrupt me if you need to.
Oh, yeah, don't worry about
To
that.
answer that question, I always go back, do I have a personal bias? I do. I'm going to admit that. When it comes to the natural world. So that's my platform. And to answer that question from a theoretical standpoint, there's all the reason in the world to believe that aspects of the natural world can actually improve our focus and our attention. For example, one theory, attention restoration theory, which was conceptualized by Kaplan. Any kind of, if you explore any type of benefit that nature brings to the table in terms of human functioning and flourishing, Kaplan will be there.
All right.
Attention restoration theory argues that we have two types of attentions. We have directed attention, and we have, or involuntary and involuntary. So the directed attention would be right now where you and I are talking, I'm thinking as you ask me this question, and I'm focused on what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
And I love talking about this, but over a period of minutes or hours, I'd become very fatigued. So that's called voluntary. The involuntary attention is the kind of attention that if we go outside, we hear a dog bark, or we hear chimes in the breeze blowing, or any kind of natural sound, actually restores our attention capacity. And so, in a nutshell, I firmly believe, in fact, it's established in the research, that if people take a break from into nature, which that's a totally different conversation as to what that is defined by, but when a person is completely engrossed in something and then given an opportunity to engage in what's called involuntary attention, they relax and become less fatigued. This works with children as well.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, it's recommended that children have what's called green time.
Oh, yeah.
Especially children that are diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the research has been done on adult attention, very
That's
little
true.
on children.
That's true. And you bring in a good point that a child sees the world differently than an adult.
It does.
How would a person with ADHD see the world differently than a person who's not living with that condition?
So I'm going to rephrase that in that, in my opinion, it's not how the person sees the world. It's how they're able to handle what they see in the world.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
You know, because children, even though they're children and they're not exposed to the, let's say, the conversations that adults are, or the literature or the reading, they're still exposed to their own cognitive demands. that's relative to
true.
a child.
That's true, yeah.
So how they're able to handle those cognitive demands is going to be determined by how other parts of their life can provide them some freedom from that fatigue.
Oh,
if that makes any
yeah,
sense.
yeah. So it basically is they need they would need to take a break of the attention grabbing items to kind of
Right.
recharge in a way, right?
Yes, and in fact with children too, we know there's a term called nature deprivation. And how over these years children are not exposed to the outdoors to the extent that they have been,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which has actually resulted in a higher depression in children. I can't say higher anxiety diagnoses, but I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah.
maybe the symptoms of ADHD are much more prominent when a child has not been able to be given some green space.
Well, I've never thought about it that way, so I'm glad you brought this up. So, say for instance, we're trying to kind of get a space that really is helpful for a person with ADHD. What kind of things should we be looking out for?
You know, simply a gaze out a window.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be, and again, another conversation, but not everyone has the resources. Not everyone can
enough,
afford
yeah.
living next to a green space or next to a park. Or,
Yeah, no,
you
fair
know,
enough.
it just doesn't fit for
Yeah.
many of us. And so it's not to say that a child has to be taken to a park or an adult, but some kind of respite that includes the natural world. If it's sitting outside literally
Oh, okay.
and looking at trees, there was a study I'm currently working on with Dr. Natalie Ceballos at Texas State. And college students complete forms that has to do with their anxiety. We took them outside for only 10 minutes. I'm not even saying,
wow.
you know, go to the park for a couple hours. I'm saying
Yeah.
10 minutes out in the green space that was between two of the residence halls.
Gotcha.
Anxiety levels substantially dropped.
Oh, wow.
So it's not got to be a huge, lengthy time. It could
Yeah.
be, I guess, if you have a room and some plants, or even that,
Yeah.
even looking at imagery. Actually, what we now know in art can actually lower stress level and
Okay.
help a person restore their thinking capacities.
It's so fascinating when you mention these studies because I guess we're more and more living in cities and as the song puts it, concrete jungles.
Concrete jungles, yep.
So,
Paradise.
Exactly. So I guess the more we try to kind of connect with nature, I guess the better.
It
in our
is.
own
It
way.
is.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is now becoming actually the awareness to the human being's affinity. And I will say that I'll go back to Edward Wilson, who coined the term biophilia. Now we're looking
yeah.
back in the 80s, which for some people that was a long time ago. That's not really that long ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
But the argument is that we innately have a draw
Yeah.
to the natural world.
Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I want to maybe ask your opinion. Within like the San Marcos area or within your travels, did you come across a space where you thought, oh, this is a really good space that if someone has ADHD, that would be a really nice space for them to spend time in because it really ticks all the boxes?
I would love to say that I discovered this oasis that's like, you know, but honestly,
Yeah.
I'll never forget, and this has not been that terribly long ago.
Yeah.
I had the most stressful day, and I struggle with some attention issues myself. And I'd had a very, very long, fatiguing day with
right.
directed attention.
Okay.
And I actually went outside and sat, and the moon was out.
Oh, right.
And I watched the clouds go, you know, on a moonlit night, there's still
Yeah.
clouds that can go past and
Yeah,
kind of fade
yeah.
the moon a little
Oh,
bit,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
it comes
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I find myself finding metaphor in this. But while I was sitting there, I literally felt better,
All right.
calmer, more relaxed.
Oh, okay.
And again, it was in my backyard,
Fair enough. Yeah.
in a lawn chair,
Oh, okay.
looking up at the sky and the moon and the clouds.
Oh, cool.
And that had an impact on me. Now, I know there are many other spaces that definitely do that.
Oh, yeah,
but-
no, fair enough. I think I'm guessing it's also slightly different for every person depending on, how they grew up, what their preferences
And
and all that.
that's part of it. I did grow up outside, basically. We traveled. We didn't have the money to stay in hotels when I was growing up, but we
Gotcha.
camped.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
we were outside quite a bit. And so, yeah, I have a little bit of a bias there, that's for sure.
Fair enough. You mentioned the financial aspect of things. Sometimes there's a financial barrier to someone kind
Yes.
of editing their space.
Yes.
But if someone told you, well, I'm in my home or in my workspace, what would something easy for me to do be to kind of get myself to focus more or get myself to keep my attention span?
Well, first, I'd like to remind all of us, and including myself,
Yeah.
that when we take in the world, it's not just visual.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With all 5 of our senses, we take in the world. And so, at a space for a person to have something that they could rely on, it could be something like a blanket to hold that's wool.
Oh, right.
It could be
Gotcha.
definitely, if we're talking their home, or they're a little bit more contained, I understand, is what you're asking.
Oh, yeah.
I firmly believe in plants.
Okay,
I'm also
yeah.
a therapist. In addition, I teach psychology, but I also have a private practice. And one time, as I was meeting with someone I'll never forget, she was stroking. I have plants everywhere.
Oh, okay.
And she was holding on to the leaf and stroking, and I thought myself, it was grounding her.
Oh, right.
And that brought her calm. That was one
Oh,
plant.
That's fantastic. I think this is one of those things where these small changes make a huge difference. So I really appreciate you highlighting those things to us.
Well,
In our next segment, we'll be joined by Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, whenever we talk about ADHD, we always have this kind of picture in our mind of like a kid in a candy store where everything is more exciting than whatever they have in hand. How do you think, as designers, we can kind of help them stay focused on whatever task they're trying to do?
I think that's a good analysis. Kid in a candy store for sure. Simplify the environment. We can't have a lot of color and a lot of pattern and a lot of chaos going on. It needs to be comforting environment, smooth surfaces, not a lack of color, but a lack of busyness, I think.
All right. So kind of like a minimalistic approach to the space, right?
Exactly.
All right. Oh, cool.
I can just see a candy store. That's the perfect analysis.
Yeah. Well, I know this about myself. Like sometimes especially if the task is kind of tedious, it's like, oh, I have not cleaned the house in forever. Let's go out and do that, right?
Right. Right.
And I love the fact that you bring up the tactility of the space. So we often kind of think of things that are visual a bit more. What's your take on like the textures of a space or the textures of an environment? How do you think that affects us in a way?
I think matte surfaces are certainly better than glossy surfaces.
All
If you
right.
can imagine reflections and how distracting they can be.
That's true. So I guess that
yeah,
this table
yeah,
might not
yeah.
be the best thing out
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
You know, if you see something out of the corner of your eye, it attracts your attention.
all right.
And more so when you have ADHD.
Yeah.
So trying to minimize those flashing, reflections and stuff in the peripheral vision.
And I guess that's for whatever reason, like the grandpa kind of clock with that huge swinging pendulum kind of comes to mind. It's there in the corner, and you're always kind of staring and kind of, oh, did something move?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of baked into our psyche that we're very attuned to movement around us, right? In a sense, because I guess it's a survival instinct in a way, correct?
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many neurodivergent populations that we design for.
That's true.
But there's a lot of the fundamental concepts that apply. Like when you said that, moving, it reminds me of post-traumatic stress syndrome, where we have to be concerned about dead ends and, fear of something around the corner.
That's true.
So,
yeah. As you mentioned, we almost never get like a one user per space scenario as designers. How can we kind of balance the needs of one population with the needs of another population? Because sometimes the needs are kind of different in a way.
Absolutely. We work with that quite a bit with the flexible space.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're doing is providing for different needs of different users. And someone may enjoy a busy, active environment. We're talking about ADHD right now, which would be really counterproductive. But for even your typical office workers, some prefer to be, in a noisy, active environment. Some need to be kind of cloistered in a booth type thing.
That's
so
true,
I think providing opportunities for people to choose is something we really are working on.
And I guess like the mantra that we always tell our students, like, okay, you need to interview the client, you need to know the client. That kind of is key here, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like if someone who wants to say change the space they're living in, and thinks, well, I can't hire a professional designer. What would be like some key things for them to look out for if they're designing for someone with a loved one, or themselves if they've got ADHD?
As a not as a professional?
Not as a
I
professional.
think they need to read the research. I think people who might have a really good flair for design really don't know the data. They don't know what we've been spending years uncovering, yourself, myself, and they need to tap into that. You can't really go with your instincts, because I think we're going to talk about lighting later, but some people like really, really bright spaces, and some people don't. And
that's true.
Even in my own home, when I have my brother-in-law and he's turning on all the overhead lights. Most designers don't like the big bright overhead lights, but you have to know, and I tell the students that too. You got to interview your client. Don't just research the condition, but research this particular user. But like you ask, if there's several users, then you have to have that flexibility.
Yeah, and but it's interesting you're mentioning lights, because for whatever reason, bright overhead lights, a lot of people tend to not like those, that type of lighting, and I wonder why.
I don't like it. Do you?
Not really, but it's. I think part of it is that that's the same type of light that we use in hospitals. So maybe there's
that's possible.
Like people not liking to go to the dentist because of that drilling kind of sound.
So you hear that, yeah. I don't know. I think everybody's different, as we know, and why we write our programs and interview our clients. But light levels, I guess we age, we do a lot of work with the elderly, our vision deteriorates, so we have to be responsive. But if you're the person that doesn't like being under a spotlight, maybe it's a matter of being introverted versus extroverted. I haven't studied that.
All right, yeah, that's also something to kind of think about. Do you think, like when we're designing, I know that designing a home is really different than designing a school or a workplace, but do you think that there's kind of some principles that carry over from space to space?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're well trained, you can design any space. I've done airports, I've done homes, I've done hospitals, I've done restaurants. And the fundamentals are there. The fundamentals are the same.
All right.
You know, I always say the elements and principles of design. Access to nature, that's not an element and principle, but, you know, light,
that's
color,
so true,
texture,
yeah.
you know, it does carry over. And we're seeing a big change with commercial environments, schools and office environments,
Yeah.
reflecting a lot of residential things, lamps, rugs,
That's true.
softer lighting.
You almost never saw it in the 90s or the 80s where you'd had like home-like features in an office space, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
In fact, you were prevented, you know, from doing that. You would be.
That is true.
So,
That is
yeah,
so
that's a
true.
big change.
It was considered, I think, unprofessional to kind of.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like, who decorated this place? You know, who'd you have come in and, you know, put these residential accessories in this space? But now I'm seeing them all the time, and they're comforting. I think a lot of residential components are comforting. We design homes to comfort people, to make them feel secure and safe.
Yeah.
And now we're moving that into commercial, excuse me,
So,
commercial environments. I'm allergic to Texas. Have I told you?
I think, like, moving on to the next point, and I think you bring in a very nice thing, is having familiarity with the environment you're working in or living in. That's a big deal, and we do that in our homes naturally all the time. Even sometimes when we spend ages designing a project, and then the client is like, they're hanging up posters and stuff everywhere.
Don't they?
And we're like, oh, you're messing up the vibe.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you come across, I want to ask, like, have you come across of any kind of examples where you thought, this is a fantastic example of an environment that would be really great for someone with ADHD, or whether it's a good environment or a bad environment?
Again, lack of distractions.
Yeah.
And comforting, a comforting environment. It's so easy for someone with ADHD to be distracted. The next shiny thing, off you go.
Yeah.
And depending on the objective of the space, is it to play, or is it to work, is it to study? Then you have to determine how much focus you want to encourage.
Got it. And for the kind of person who's listening in, like, and they think, okay, what are some maybe small changes I can start doing to kind of make my environments, well, I won't say slightly more bearable, but nicer.
More supportive.
More supportive, there you go.
Yeah. Again, flexibility. Allow your users to make the changes they feel they need.
All right.
But you might be dealing with a child who doesn't know yet.
That's so true.
So you want to...
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So I think it's the age of the person as well kind of factors in, because well, I know my kids, they view everything from 3 feet, so everything is like large, and they're always looking up, and then once they get older and they're much taller, they view everything looking down. So
Right, right.
that's kind of interesting to see all of that.
And from a seated perspective, if you're designing a space to support someone who's working on a computer, those needs are different than if they're doing a conversation or dining or whatever
That is
tasks the space has to support.
That is so true. So I want so many things to think about here. I know, like, and a lot of to chew on. I think on my end at least. So I really want to thank you for that, Denise. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So I think design can be a powerful ally for neurodivergent individuals, and the way we shape our environments, it can reduce sensory overload and support our focus. And we want to create spaces where people thrive. I want to thank you for watching Mindscapes, and until we meet again next time, take care and keep designing for well-being.